Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Ramkhelawan. Yes, we have changed our locations. We're coming to you live from the beautiful waterfront. We're actually out on the terrace area at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. And the reason we're here today, well, it's the big day, October 1st, budget day. And thanks for inviting us into your home. CNC3 is the only place to ensure that you are aware of all that's happening in the country, all of the major issues affecting life in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, over the weekend, the People's Partnership government held a pre-budget rally, a celebration of all that is the People's Partnership. Thousands turned out, party loyalists, and this is all following the Section 34 fiasco. A number of major announcements were made. Subhas Ramkhelawan has graciously agreed to stay with us for a couple minutes this morning to really give his insights into what's happening in the country, the major challenges facing the economy. All eyes will be on Minister Ramkhelawan today. Over the weekend, a number of stories emerged. The biggest one, well, the removal of VAT on food items. What exactly does this mean? The opposition has lashed out, saying the removal of VAT from food, the PP fooling the people again. Subhas, good morning again. Thank you for joining us. How have you been?
Wonderful.
Now, I know today's also a big cricket day, so Subhas is really, into the cricket as well. But let's look at the odds this morning. Ramkhelawan is up to bat. Star batsman this morning. He's going to be, do not know the cricket too, so I'm not really going to stand out of my element this morning. But what do you think the minister will announce today? Everybody is expecting major announcements. Some of them were revealed over the weekend. What can we expect?
Well, most people are listening out for how we are going to get the economy growing again. And that seems to be the real challenge, because we are really at a point of inflection in terms of where we go and how we go forward. If we do not get revenues up in the medium term, our debt situation is going to grow to uncomfortable levels. If we do not contain the levels of expenditure without growth, we are also going to be in trouble. We are running at deficits of $7 billion, and $7 billion, these deficits amount to about over 15% of the revenues that we are generating. So the challenge is growth. I think the minister has announced that, and I share the view that we need to get growth to adjust the revenue and expenditure side.
Now, we're adjusting the revenue and expenditure side, yet we see the Prime Minister made the announcements about the removal of VAT.
Yes.
Before we get into the political dimensions of this announcement, some are saying that it's really not the most prudent announcement to make at this time. If you're announcing that you're removing this level of VAT, one, the current BIR system and the current system of collection, the current system of monitoring is so antiquated and incapable of handling the current load. Now that we're increasing the number of zero-rated items on this list, can we really handle it to monitor, to ensure, one, that it's done effectively and that there's no leakage and continuing abuse of the system?
Well, I think that argument is really a red herring. That can be managed, and it will be managed. I think the greater concern is we are really reducing revenues. We are going to be reducing revenues. So I look forward to hearing what is the extent of a revenue adjustment downwards caused by the zero rating of VAT. Because it is on food only, I do not expect it to be a significant component of the VAT story. But let's listen out this afternoon, because I do not have the figures in front of me, what that adjustment to VAT will turn out to be in terms of our revenue shortfall.
Looking at the revenue shortfall, and you're right, it's only food items at this time. But if we have to look further, government, if we had to go by one of the articles published in one of the daily newspapers today, national security, housing, and food food production ministry will be receiving the largest allocations from the budget. Now, obviously, crime remains a major concern. It is affecting every element of life in Trinidad and Tobago, including business activity. But in terms of the priorities, in terms of ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago is truly transformed into a first world nation, a knowledge-based society, centers of growth have been identified, yet we're seeing, some would say, examples of same old policy.
Yes. While that is true, I think a focus on food production would be a welcome move. Increases in food production will have two effects. The first is it will impact the price of food, and if it impacts the price of food positively, that is, food prices are adjusted downwards, what you are also going to get, of course, is the adjustment to inflation. And this is very important, because the major mover of inflation in our country is food price, because energy is flat, it is subsidized, And the core inflation, which is the third part of it, has remained reasonably comfortable at just under about 2% or so. So we need to contain inflation. Housing. Governments have been terrible at managing housing and the generation of the housing stock because it is done very inefficiently. And what we need to do is to ensure that that is done prudently. We have seen how the move towards housing before caused severe dislocations and delivery problems. National security, I think at the end of the day, the question of national security has to address in the main the efficiency of the utilization of funds, training for our police forces, more effective police force. And those are issues that we look forward to hearing, but you would not hear that in a budget. What you would hear is how much more money would be expended in national security.
Now, okay, so we're looking at the drive to housing, and you are right. The previous administration got into a lot of trouble with many saying that there was an overheating of the economy. The JCC came out, yet we're still in a situation where the procurement legislation has still not been put in place. How are we going to ensure that balance with, one, not going too quickly to ensure there's transparency and accountability, and to also ensure we do not go down the road that we did before?
I would say with great difficulty, because at the end of the day, the procurement legislation is still some distance away in terms of time, in terms of generating your green paper, your white paper, your policies, and so on. So procurement has to be dealt with because it is a burning issue in terms of how contracts are given out and so on. But over and beyond that is the question of on the expenditure side, we are ratcheting up expenditure. I am not seeing anything with regard to increase in revenues, and I don't see the situation changing for the next 2 years. I don't see, taking a political look in, I don't see a government in its third year looking towards election, seeking to change or cut back too much on expenditure. At the same time, to increase revenues in the short term, you are going to have to raise taxes. And that is not something that anyone wants to touch. So the one area would be economic growth. And let me speak to economic growth. The minister will have to segment his initiatives in economic growth into three parts: the short term, the medium term, and beyond the medium term. In the short term, food production can give you a quick kick, not only in terms of food prices, but also in terms of a quick ratchet up to employment.
Right, but
problem is that the approach to leasing out those lands into the private sector, because the public sector will not be able to do a good job. The approach to leasing out those lands, the procurement aspect of it will take some time.
But
the next short term is energy.
Right.
And in the energy side, the biggest and fastest kick that you could get is to get oil production up. You've found 80 million barrels of oil. And if you're going to do that, you need to ramp up that production. You need to accelerate the program. Experts have said to me, look, if you want to get 15,000 barrels of oil more, 20,000, you're going to have to put down 50 wells. To put down 50 wells will take a program of about 3 years. But if you start now and you put down, 10, 15 wells with 2 rigs, that is going to get you on the path.
How would you respond to the criticism, Subhas? And I know we have a couple of minutes again, that a number of the initiatives that have been announced or are expected to be announced are superficial in nature, that they really do not make the hard decisions required to take this country to the step forward. We're looking at construction, we're looking at adjustments of food prices, which, while on a superficial level, will battle the inflation problem. In the long term, are we really looking at the causes of these problems, or are we simply addressing the symptoms?
Well, let me talk about housing and construction. You need to get construction going. If you are going to kickstart any economy, part of the equation must be construction. And the idea of construction is, if you do residential homes and commercial property and shift it more to the private sector, you will get more efficiency and you could get quicker turnaround. The thing with housing in particular is that if you deal with housing and the residential side, 7 or 8 years ago, there was a program with tax incentives and so on, which did give a kick to residential and commercial housing. I would like to see something like that rather than a discussion on the public sector trying to take housing forward. It has not worked very well in the past, and I don't expect it will work very well in the future.
And so I just have a couple of minutes to wrap this interview. how would you measure? It's a litmus test today for the Minister of Finance, looking at what he's expected to present. If we have to do that, how would you determine whether he was able to be neutral, acidic, alkaline? Is it a pass or a fail? What will be your measuring stick?
Positive indicators would be how he addresses the matter of economic growth. Back to that, how he contains expenditure, and I think at the very outset, he may not get a good grade in terms of generating additional revenue. We are not increasing volume output, and we have depended for some time on favorable prices for oil and gas over and above the budgeted figures.
Subhas Ramkhelawan, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We are here live at the Hyatt Regency Hotel. We're coming to you from the beautiful waterfront area. Pretty soon you're going to see the TT Spirit passing. We now take a very short break. When we come back, former Minister of Finance Mariano Brown will be joining us on set. His thoughts on all that has been revealed thus far. What are the major challenges? Today, all eyes on the Minister of Finance. Will he pass the test? Stay with us. Thank you.
Okay, good. Is a very